Your balance sheet is lying to you because the financial industry has spent decades redefining consumption as an investment. While you celebrate the equity in your driveway, the cold accounting shows a $45,000 loss structured to feel like ownership. If your holdings aren't actively generating income or reliably appreciating, you aren't building wealth. You are simply financing an ecosystem designed to extract it. Picture a 34-year-old factory worker in Flint, Michigan, during the autumn of 1987. You have just put pen to paper on a gleaming Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme, breathing in that intoxicating scent of fresh upholstery and triumph. To you, this moment represents the pinnacle of a multi-generational climb. Your grandfather spent 4 decades toiling only to pass away with empty pockets, and your father never experienced the pride of a factory-fresh ignition. You look at your life, the house, the car, the garage overflowing with tools, the closet of Sunday clothes, and even the life insurance policy your cousin convinced you to buy, and you see a fortress of wealth. But while the salesman, the banker, and the Union Hall pamphlets all nod in approval, they are withholding a brutal mathematical reality. You are not building a legacy, you are feeding a furnace. The distinction between a true asset and a parasitic liability is not a matter of opinion, but of cold accounting. An asset is an engine that pumps liquidity into your life, whereas a liability is a vacuum that sucks it out. Real wealth builders are items that generate consistent income, appreciate with predictable reliability, or fundamentally lower your future cost of living. If a possession fails all 3 tests, it is nothing more than a sophisticated metabolic drain on your future. It is a slow-motion debt masquerading as a trophy. Once you peel back the skin of this illusion, the skeletal structure of modern consumption becomes impossible to ignore. Consider the car, which has transitioned from a tool into a financial anchor. In 1950, a typical vehicle cost roughly $1,500, requiring about 46% of a median household's annual income. Fast forward to 2023, and that transaction price has skyrocketed to $48,000, devouring 63% of the median family's yearly earnings. We have normalized this radical increase in cost as a baseline for survival. The moment those tires touch the public road, between 9 and 11% of your money simply evaporates into the atmosphere. Even if you maintain the vehicle to a pristine standard, it will retain a mere 40% of its value after 5 years. To mask this decay, lenders have stretched financing terms from the 48-month standards of 1990 to the 72 and 84-month marathons seen today. This isn't because the machines have improved. It is because the price tags have outstripped honest mathematics. When you factor in the relentless bleed of insurance, registration, fuel, maintenance, repairs, and parking, the average American is burning $12,822 every year. According to the 2023 ALA cost study, a 5-year window of ownership results in a staggering $60,000 in cash outflow. At the end of that period, you might claw back $15,000 in a sale, leaving you with a $45,000 deficit. This is a predatory ecosystem designed to harvest your labor. While you believe you are accumulating equity, you are actually funding the profit margins of automakers, finance houses, insurers, and the fuel industry. Unlike a rental property that yields monthly checks, a bond that pays interest, or a piece of machinery that creates sellable goods, your car produces nothing but mileage. In most cities, you are paying a massive premium for a service that could be acquired for far less elsewhere. This brings us to the most sacred cow of the American dream, the primary residence. Discussing this usually ignites a firestorm of defensiveness because it challenges the very core of our identity, but the ledger remains indifferent to sentiment. For the vast majority of families, the home they live in is not the wealth-generating powerhouse they have been led to believe. To understand why, we must look past the curtains and the white picket fence to see the gears of the actual financial mechanism. To transform a $300,000 dwelling into a genuine financial gain, you would need to offload it for 7 figures 3 decades from now. This is the heavy lifting required to counteract the crushing weight of a 10% down payment paired with a 30-year mortgage at 7% interest. Over the timeline of that loan, you aren't just buying a home, you are handing $418,000 in pure interest to the bank. When you layer on the inevitable drain of $4,500 in yearly property taxes, totaling $135,000, and $45,000 in insurance premiums, the math begins to sour. Add a conservative $90,000 for maintenance, calculated at 1% of the value annually, and your total expenditure balloons to approximately $1,180,000. To simply break even, your property must appreciate by more than 4% every single year without fail. Meanwhile, the $30,000 you used for the down payment could have quietly blossomed into $300,000 if left in a basic index fund returning 8%. We are told that renting is merely burning cash, yet for 12.5 million Americans who found themselves underwater after the 2008 crash, the home was not a bedrock of stability. It was a financial sinkhole that swallowed decades of labor while offering only the mirage of wealth. This same deceptive architecture has been grafted onto the American university system. In 1980, the price of admission to a four-year public institution sat at a modest $2,100 when adjusted for inflation. By 2023, that base tuition surged past $10,000, with the true annual cost hitting $25,000 once housing and fees are tallied. While the narrative insists that a degree is a golden ticket because the earnings gap between graduates and high schoolers has jumped from 40% to 80%, the reality is far more fractured. This premium is almost entirely concentrated in the elite corridors of medicine, law, engineering, and computer science. For those pursuing the arts, humanities, or social sciences, the cost of the credential frequently dwarfs any subsequent pay raise. We are now staring at a national debt mountain of $1.77 trillion, where the average individual owes $37,000. 1 out of every 4 borrowers is caught in a tide of negative amortization, watching their balances grow because their monthly contributions cannot even touch the accumulating interest. Consider the typical psychology graduate who walks across the stage with $45,000 in debt, only to land a job paying a median $38,000. After the basic necessities of survival are met, they might have $400 left for the bank, yet the standard repayment schedule demands $500. This shortfall forces them into income-driven repayment plans where the principal remains untouched while interest piles up like a debt-fueled snowstorm. After 20 years of this struggle, any forgiven balance is treated as taxable income, creating a final tax bill that functions as a parting gift from a broken system. You are not buying a productive asset or a tangible capital good. You are purchasing an expensive lottery ticket printed on high-quality paper. It is a pass to enter a labor pool that may never provide the wages required to justify the original entry fee. The universities knew this. The lending industry knew this. The student is effectively a human conduit designed to funnel federally backed treasury funds directly into university endowments. In this financial choreography, the scholar is not the primary consumer but rather the structural bridge that allows capital to migrate from the public coffer to institutional reserves. This systemic extraction mirrors the deceptive architecture of whole life insurance, a product that dominated the American landscape in 1945. Back then, agents embedded themselves into the social fabric as trusted family confidants to sell a complicated hybrid of protection and profit. The hook was simple: fund a lifetime of premiums to secure both a death benefit and a growing pool of cash. However, this pitch glossed over the dismal mathematics. While the cash value typically limps along with an annual return of 1 to 3%, frequently losing ground to inflation, the broader markets offer a much sharper edge. If you took a monthly premium of $200 and placed it into a standard index fund for 40 years, you would likely see that capital swell to over $600,000 based on historical equity returns of 7 to 10%. In contrast, the whole life policy would leave you with a meager $150,000. This massive shortfall doesn't vanish. It is harvested to fuel insurance company marketing, shareholder dividends, and the agents themselves, who pocket between 50 and 100% of your entire first-year premium as commission. You are essentially renting a high-fee savings locker inside a corporation's vault, while they invest your capital for their own gain. For the average healthy person, opting for term life insurance provides the exact same safety net at a tenth of the price, allowing the surplus to be invested where it actually builds personal sovereignty. Yet, the industry continues to mask these underperforming products under the guise of being the responsible, sophisticated choice for the working class. This drive to own the means of production often manifests in what has become a cemetery of dead ambitions within the American home. Our garages and spare rooms are cluttered with high-end sewing machines, industrial-grade kitchen appliances, and silent workshops, a collection of tools bought with the sincere intent to save money through self-reliance. Take the home gym as a prime example. A basic setup of a treadmill and weights can easily cost $3,000. On paper, if this equipment replaces a $50 monthly gym fee for 5 years, you break even. But the hardware is rarely the bottleneck. It is the human variable. Statistics reveal that after just 6 months, 67% of this equipment is used less than once a week, and within 2 years, most of it sits entirely dormant. We purchase these items based on a fantasy of our future discipline, but when that behavior fails to materialize, the equipment becomes a static liability. It simply depreciates. The same pattern applies to musical instruments purchased for lessons that lasted 6 months. Retailers are master psychologists who don't just sell products, they sell a blueprint for a phantom self. Think of the pristine power tools gathering dust on a workbench for projects that never broke ground, or the professional-grade kitchen appliances whose only regular interaction is with a takeout menu. We even see this in the high-end cameras that capture precisely 3 weekends of a new hobby before being exiled to a drawer. When you look at the physical presence of these items in your garage, they provide a seductive, tactile illusion of productivity and ownership. However, once you decide to liquidate these monuments to abandoned ambition, the market will likely return a mere 20% of your initial outlay. This isn't an investment in your future. It is a down payment on a ghost. You aren't building a portfolio. You are simply taking out an expensive lease on a daydream that will never be realized. This same speculative rot has historically infected the world of collectibles, where an entire generation was tricked into believing that cardboard could outperform a bank account. After a mint-condition Wayne Gretzky rookie card commanded $100,000 in 1991, the industry entered a fever pitch. Parents treated packs of cards like blue-chip stocks, and card shops acted as financial advisors, encouraging collectors to vacuum seal their holdings. But by 1998, the house of cards collapsed because the fundamental pillar of value, scarcity, was abandoned. Manufacturers flooded the market with millions of prints, ensuring that the 1992 cards you hoarded had no inherent rarity. Whether it is Beanie Babies, comic books, stamps, or modern NFTs, the mechanism remains identical. You are betting on 4 volatile factors: absolute scarcity, perpetual demand from future generations who may not care about the subject, expensive third-party authentication, and the sudden availability of a buyer exactly when you need to exit. Contrast this with a dividend stock that yields quarterly payments or a rental property that pays you to wait. A collectible is a silent passenger that consumes money for insurance and storage, while appreciating only in the theater of your imagination. For every headline about a rare item fetching millions, 10,000 other collections are quietly sold for pennies at estate sales. This is survivorship bias masquerading as a business model. The rare winners get the spotlight while the countless losers end up as landfill fodder. Even the closet isn't safe from this financial mirage, often justified by the buy-quality narrative. We are told that an expensive item is actually a bargain when you calculate the cost per wear, but the math rarely checks out. A $200 coat worn 100 times costs $2 per use, whereas a $50 coat worn 50 times costs only $1 per use. The supposedly premium investment is actually double the price. The fashion industry thrives on our inability to predict how our bodies, lifestyles, or preferences will shift before an item becomes obsolete. The cost per wear calculation requires accurate prediction of future behavior. How many times you'll actually wear the item before fashion cycles, body changes, lifestyle shifts, or preference changes make it obsolete. The average American household effectively sets fire to $1,700 every single year in the name of style, a figure that balloons to a staggering $68,000 over a typical 40-year career. We are told that buying expensive, high-quality garments is a savvy financial move because they supposedly last longer, but the math behind this cost per wear narrative is often a house of cards. Consider a $200 coat worn 100 times over 5 years. It costs you $2 every time you put it on. Compare that to a $50 jacket worn 50 times over just 2 years, which only costs $1 per wear. The premium choice is actually the more expensive one. This calculation is further undermined by the fact that most people regularly utilize a mere 20% of their closets. The remaining 80% sits like a stagnant pond of depreciating fabric, eventually destined for the thrift store economy. These stores essentially operate as massive clearinghouses for the miscalculations of consumers who thought they were building a wardrobe but were actually just financing a mountain of unused textiles. Despite what fashion marketing suggests, clothes are not an asset class. They are a psychological expense that generates no return other than a fleeting feeling. This same exploitation of human psychology fuels the $40 billion extended warranty industry, which thrives on our inability to accurately calculate risk. When a salesperson pitches peace of mind for your new television or appliance, they are selling you a product where the house always wins by a massive margin. Data reveals that for every dollar you hand over, warranty providers pay out only 20 cents in actual claims. The remaining 80 cents are swallowed by administrative costs, aggressive marketing, and pure corporate profit. Throughout a lifetime of purchases, a typical household will surrender $5,000 or more to these plans, only to recover about $1,000 in repairs. This $4,000 gap is a direct transfer of wealth from the anxious to the actuarially sophisticated. Actual failure rates for modern electronics within these warranty windows are remarkably low, frequently dipping below 5%, and many issues are already mitigated by manufacturer guarantees. Calling this responsible ownership is an accounting fiction. In reality, It is a persistent tax on fear. The escalation of this wealth-stripping model is most visible in the explosive growth of the timeshare sector, which surged from $50 million in annual revenue in 1974 to more than $10 billion by 2019. These products are masterfully marketed as a piece of paradise or a legacy to pass down to your children, intentionally blurring the lines between a vacation and real estate ownership. However, the financial reality is that a timeshare is a ghost of a property. You do not own the dirt, and you do not own the bricks. You simply own the right to occupy a specific room during a specific week, all while being shackled to maintenance fees that you have no power to control. You don't own a building. You own the right to use a specific space for a specific week, subject to maintenance fees you don't control. Maintenance fees are the invisible shackles of the timeshare industry, functioning as a permanent financial drain that you can never truly shake. Currently, these average annual costs have climbed past $1,000, escalating at a predatory pace of 4 to 8% every year, a rate that consistently leaves general inflation in the dust. You cannot simply opt out. Refusing to pay means losing the entire interest, yet the obligation itself is a ghost that haunts your estate, eventually becoming a legal anchor for your children. Imagine spending $20,000 on the initial buy-in and another $1,000 annually for 2 decades. You have effectively spent $40,000 on what amounts to a high-priced hotel room available for only 7 days a year. When you try to leave this arrangement, you find that the resale value is non-existent, with thousands of owners listing their shares for a single dollar just to escape the fees, often failing to find a taker even at that price. This is not real estate. It is a meticulously designed wealth extraction chamber. Specialized law firms now exist solely to navigate these exits, sometimes charging fees that dwarf the original purchase price just to untangle a family from a liability they thought was an investment. In the living room, the situation is equally grim, as the average American home holds roughly $7,000 in furniture that will eventually sell for a meager $700. This category depreciates with a violence unmatched by almost any other consumer good. A $2,000 sofa, after a single year of use, might fetch $300 if luck is on your side, but it is far more likely to be worth $150 or even zero. In many cases, you end up paying a professional to haul it away. Despite the glossy narratives of interior design culture that frame these purchases as investments in your lifestyle or home value, the market remains indifferent. A buyer will not pay a premium for your house because of your couch. Your personal taste carries no transferable equity. Furthermore, the industry has shifted toward a model of disposable luxury. While a sofa in 1960 was engineered to last over 20 years, today's average lifespan has shriveled to approximately 7 years. This is planned obsolescence disguised as self-care, turning your home into a revolving door for showroom inventory where the store is the only true asset holder. The allure of wearing your net worth leads many into the jewelry store, lured by the millennia-old status of gold and the marketing myth that diamonds are forever. However, the jewelry industry operates on a retail markup of 100 to 300%, creating an immediate financial wound the moment you leave the counter. A ring purchased for $3,000 often contains only about $800 worth of actual wholesale materials. You effectively incinerate 2/3 of your capital in the time it takes to walk to your car. Diamonds are particularly problematic. The De Beers cartel controlled diamond supply for most of the 20th century, artificially restricting output to inflate prices. The 1947 Diamonds Are Forever initiative was a masterstroke of psychological engineering, not an educational triumph. Its true objective was to lock consumer supply in a vault of sentimentality, effectively paralyzing the secondary market to keep retail prices artificially high. If you attempt to liquidate a diamond today, you will face the sobering reality of the pawn shop window, where offers rarely exceed 20 to 30% of the original price tag. Professional diamond buyers operate with similarly predatory margins, ensuring that your perceived investment vanishes into thin air the moment you seek liquidity. While gold jewelry retains its elemental value better than gemstones, it remains a financial sieve. When you pay retail, you are subsidizing the designer's fame, the manufacturer's overhead, and the store's high street rent, costs that are never recovered at the scales of a smelter. If your goal is to hold gold as a legitimate capital asset, you must bypass the display case and acquire bullion, coins, or bars traded at minimal premiums over the spot price. The craftsmanship surcharge on jewelry is a consumption expense, plain and simple. Even the common dream of passing down an heirloom is largely a myth, as most descendants either sell the pieces immediately for quick cash or leave them in a drawer because generational tastes and dated aesthetics have turned the treasure into a relic. This is luxury consumption wrapped in a manufactured folklore that costs you 60 to 80% of your capital the second you leave the boutique. Perhaps the most insidious deception in the working-class financial vocabulary is the belief that cash constitutes an asset. While it is the ultimate yardstick of liquidity and the benchmark for every other transaction, cash is fundamentally a melting ice cube. It lacks the metabolic ability to grow, and instead, it loses purchasing power with every tick of the clock. Consider the invisible erosion caused by inflation. At a historical average of 3%, your money loses half its utility in 24 years. If that rate climbs to 5%, your wealth is halved in less than 15 years. A deposit of $1,000 left in a checking account in the year 2000 has the same numerical face value today, but it can only secure approximately $580 worth of actual goods. Many families, understandably traumatized by market volatility, retreat into the perceived safety of safe deposit boxes or mattresses. They believe they are being prudent and risk-averse, but they are actually volunteering for a slow-motion bankruptcy. This is a particularly cruel trap for those who distrust financial institutions, as their skepticism leads them to hold the one instrument guaranteed to fail by design. Inflation is not a malfunction of the economy. It is a stated policy. Central banks explicitly target positive inflation, a system that systematically rewards the owners of appreciating assets while punishing those who cling to currency. We have examined 12 distinct items, each one aggressively pitched to the working class as a pillar of prosperity. Yet, when stripped of their marketing veneers, every single one reveals the same DNA. They generate zero income, they require constant maintenance or insurance, they're nearly impossible to liquidate at a fair price, and they benefit the seller far more than the buyer. These are the gears of a wealth extraction machine that functions by making you feel like you are accumulating status while you are actually depleting your life's work. The factory worker in Flint, Michigan, did not suffer a personal failure of character or work ethic. The system operated exactly as it was designed to. It successfully harvested 40 years of his manual labor, leaving behind a depreciated house, a garage of worthless tools, and a total lack of liquid wealth. His children, inheriting his vocabulary and his myths, are currently standing in the same line. The things you think you own are actually owning your time and your future. History does not repeat, but the ledger always balances, and this analysis serves as a final warning to check the math before the system finishes its work. This content is for historical and educational purposes only and does not constitute financial or investment advice.